Hey everyone, welcome to Roto World's Roundball Stew. I am Matt Stroup. It is Friday, November 4th, and today it is your serviceable and intriguing waiver wire pickups for week 3. I'm joined by Jonas Nader, who writes the waiver wire column for NBC Sports Edge, and Ryan Knaus, who I would say loves talking about waiver wire pickups in general. Ryan, would you say that's an accurate tagline for you?
I would, and I forgot that that the subtitle to this episode was serviceable and intriguing, which I really enjoy. I feel like that's going to sum up a lot of the people we're about to talk about.
Hey, listen, if they're not serviceable or intriguing, what are we doing here? Why are we here? All right. Well, first things first. Now, Jonas, of course, is going to write is writing the waiver wire column. It's going to publish today. If by the time you hear this, it's probably already published. But we also have a couple of we have a couple big situations to talk about in terms of like big name players who will be off their roster for the foreseeable future. So let's start in Philly. We know James Harden is set to miss a month due to a tendon strain in his right foot. And honestly, I just tend to take the over on any injury timetable these days. I mean, so if we know he's out for a month, we have to assume there's a possibility it's longer than a month at this point. So, Jonas, for starters, I don't know if there's a waiver wire pickup here, but like, what do you think the kind of fallout is here for the roster, and who do you think benefits the most?
Yeah, I had to double check Melton's roster percentage, and it's sitting right now at
69%, right?
69%. Yeah, so unless you're in a shadow league, he's most likely gone, and for good reason too. I mean, I was looking at his rank this morning, and it kind of took me back because everyone had dropped Melton like the first week because he's been playing low minutes, but he was super efficient. And once Embiid started missing games, and now there's Harden sitting out, Melton was the fifth starter, so he's been getting a lot more minutes. And in only 22 minutes per game, he's been a sixth rounder. Pretty nuts. His steal rate is top of the NBA right now. He's hitting threes at a ridiculous clip. I don't think he's missed a free throw yet. Nope, he hasn't missed a free throw yet. He's just playing unbelievable. And I was worried at first that Taylor Jenkins followed him to Philly because of the minutes.
Yeah.
Doc Rivers finally understands what a good player he is. So I think Melton's going to be, honestly, could be top 50 without Harden.
Yeah, absolutely. I follow you on Twitter, Jonas, so I get all the Melton play-by-play as we as we go through this, and it was disheartening.
8 Melton
to see
tweets per day from Jonas.
Yeah.
But to see the minutes that low, given his per minute production, it's like, what are they doing? But absolutely, Melton is the biggest winner here. But Harden, as we know, he has the ball in his hands a lot. He's got 27% usage. A lot of that's going to go to Embiid and Maxey. I think Tyrese Maxey is another pretty big winner here. But quietly, I think a guy like Tobias Harris could also win. Now, these aren't pickups. I mean, this is the waiver wire episode. All these guys are already rostered with the possible exception of Melton, as you said, in shallower leagues. I don't know that there's like a rush to the wire and grab XYZ player who's probably not rostered in many leagues. Is there anyone who springs to mind, guys, outside? Because that usage is going to be picked up by a bunch of different players. It's going to go to the heavy hitters and Maxey and so forth.
I mean, I'm not picking up Daniel House, that's for sure.
Right.
Niang is sort of interesting. I think he can be like a guy that can get you like 3 triples with like maybe 13, 14 points, but nothing else. Consider him like a bargain bin, Doug McDermott, I would say. Another guy I would watch would
there's an intriguing sell right there. If that doesn't get you pumped, I don't know what's going to, honestly.
Exactly. But I was also looking at Shake Milton too. Like if Shake Milton gets minutes, he's been productive in the past too.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's been kind of buried in that depth chart. But Shake Milton is kind of interesting. I think if you're in a deep league, I'd be watching him very close tonight.
Yeah, I saw Shake get added in one of my leagues. I'm not running to do that just yet, but certainly a watch list guy at least. And as for Melton, yeah, he's played 30 plus minutes in 2 of his last 3 active games. He missed one recently. So positive sign there. And by the way, I did go into Twitter recently to try to mute tweets from Jonas Nader about DeAnthony Melton, but I couldn't figure out that setting. It has a very specific configuration.
DM Elon Musk. He'll set that up for you.
Oh boy, too much content there. All right, as you probably heard by now, elsewhere, Kyrie Irving has been suspended by the Nets for at least 5 games. Now, because this is a waiver wire podcast, we're looking at this from a fantasy basketball and roster standpoint. So with Irving suspended, and Ben Simmons injured, by the way, is there anyone we're adding here, Jonas? Is there any action to take here in terms of our fantasy rosters?
Well, as I was writing the waiver wire this morning, I was looking at the roster and I was like, you know what? I can't just put Patty Mills. I'm going to put Patty Mills versus Edmund Sumner because Sumner has been the better player. Sumner has leaped ahead of Cam Thomas there as well. And I don't know if you guys remember, but 2 or 3 years ago, Sumner kind of exploded onto the scene. He was injured coming out of college, but he was highly regarded. So he's had several knee injuries. He's always had talent. He's always had upside, and he's finally putting it together. We've heard several players already like hype him up. Kevin Durant has been impressed. So I think Edmund Sumner has a shot at winning this position battle, but I think right now Patty Mills has a slight edge, and I think he's to pick up, even though, as we know, Patty Mills' upside is not great.
Yeah,
I would say that's true.
He's very, very boring. 3-pointers, that's about it. And the same could be said for Seth Curry, who just returned, but he's already being load managed. Both Patty and Seth have such low ceilings for me in fantasy. Like, we've seen what these guys can offer at their healthy best in their prime, and it's not much, granted.
I mean, I think in a universe where Seth Curry is fully healthy and, you know, and the roster is such that it is right now, I'd be decently excited about Seth Curry. I mean, he can get you some dimes and a bunch of threes.
Top 100
and points. So I would be interested in that one. He's 18% roster, but as you said, it takes a little bit of air out of the balloon that he's being load managed. However, to me, in a deep enough league, I think he's a pickup potentially. I'd add him before Patty Mills personally, even if he's going to play less games. Does that make any sense? I don't know.
Like with a rest of season view, I'm down with that. But I think in this short-term window, while Kyrie is out, as we said, Seth Curry, I think played 17 minutes in his first game back, then rested. Like, that's not someone I'm looking to pick up for the next 2 weeks. So that just takes the air out of the balloon to steal your phrase. And like, you know, to Jonas's point, I'm surprised that Cam Thomas is not even in the rotation at this point. It'll be interesting to see if he can finally get on the court without Kyrie in the coming days, because offense is going to be a challenge.
And a new coach too.
So that might help. I think Cam Thomas is surprised that Cam Thomas is not in the rotation as well.
That's true.
Okay. One more guy, though, Joe Harris might be somewhat interesting. 10% rostered. Now, they have it back-to-back tonight and tomorrow. If Joe Harris plays both games, I'm suddenly a little intrigued there.
All right. Before we get into, you know, generally we talk sub 40% rostered in Yahoo or less. There's just a couple games I guess we would call this kind of the last call situation on these guys, because they're already past 40%, but maybe still worth mentioning. I mean, Jalen McDaniels, coming off a 5-steal, 2-block game in 36 minutes. To me, I think the thing I want to talk to you guys about is I worry a little bit that the fun could be over once LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier are back for Jalen McDaniels. But even so, I still think we have to see where this goes. I think it's right to be rostering him, and I think he could have value all season long, but just be prepared for that possibility.
Yeah, and he's already a favorite of Clifford's too. He's played the 2, 3, 4, and 5 in his career, so there's multiple pass to minutes. Gordon Hayward is hurt now, so that's Hayward, Rozier. Sure. I think the Martin brother is injured right now as well, too. I haven't checked on him lately. And LaMelo, right? We don't know when he's coming back. So can play in multiple positions. He is the stocks king right now, 1.7 steals and 1 block per 36 minutes. I think he started the season like 9 of 12 or 9 of 13 from 3. He's regressed a little bit, but he's still at 50%, which is just crazy. He's top 75, just like his brother right now in 9-cat and 26 minutes per game. So there is a lot of upside here. And I was watching the Hornets the other day because I'm from Charlotte and I have to watch them sometimes. He was actually bringing the ball up the floor and dishing it. Like, he did not do that last year. He was extremely limited offensively. So you can clearly tell he's worked on this game. I'm in on Jalen. I think he's going to be here for quite a while, actually.
Yeah, and he's been a top 75 guy despite shooting, I think, 42% from the field to this point. And I love that point you made, Jonas, of the fact that he can get minutes at multiple positions. So yes, it's reasonable to have trepidation about what happens when Rozier comes back and LaMelo comes back. The usage will take a little bit of a hit. But this is a guy who, you look at those stocks, and that's pure gold, as you said. I think he's at 1.6 steals, 1.5 blocks after that big defensive gem the other night. Those are the kinds of guys that I want for my waiver wire pickups, because he's not going to need 30 minutes a night to hit value. He, give him 25 minutes, get some stocks, some boards, hit a couple threes. Suddenly you're helping 8-cat, 9-cat managers. So yeah, I quite like his profile rest of the season.
Stephen Coe in the chat is asking about Dennis Smith Jr. while we're talking about the Hornets. And I mean, look, at this point, he's kind of proven himself, right? Like, he's the plug and play option when LaMelo is out. I think there's no doubt about that. I think once Rozier and LaMelo are back, though, I mean, Dennis Smith Jr. is heading back to your fantasy waiver wire. But yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, Tyus Jones or a guy we'll talk about in a minute, Davion Mitchell, some of these high upside contingency point guards. He's certainly proven, at least at this stage of his career, he can be that, if nothing else. Anything to add?
Nope, that's a bargain bin contract the Hornets got him on too. So that's another trade chip they have, because you look at their roster right now, this team screams Victor Wembanyama, right? 4 of their top guys injured. Miles probably not coming back. So we could see definitely some fire sales down the line here.
All right. Quickly want to mention Lonnie Walker. He's 50% rostered, has at least 1 steal in 6 out of 7 games and at least 1 block in 6 out of 7. He's coming off 28 points in 40 minutes. I think he just needs to be rostered in most competitive leagues at this point while we see if he can keep these defensive stats afloat. Every passing day, I start to believe just a tiny bit more, even though it's only been 7 games. Jonas, what are your thoughts on Lonnie? Anything to add? We've talked about him a bunch already.
Yeah, Spurs fans got to be thrown up right now, man. They gave away this guy, and all of a sudden he's just going off for LA. That's just really unfortunate. And honestly, without Lonnie, the Lakers are probably 0-7, right? He's been really, really good those last 2 games and both wins too. So the reason I like Lonnie is because even though his current shooting may not be sustainable, LeBron James had his shoe off at one point during the game. His foot is really bothering him. I think this is going to be year they have to load manage him. Anthony Davis has been playing through a back injury. His dream of playing all 82 games came to an abrupt end on day 3. Really unfortunate for him. Tough scene. But yeah, I think Lonnie, he's a great hedge against both Lakers superstars right now.
Yeah, and he's so surprising to me, frankly, how well he's performed this year. He's really come out of the gates hot. Even in their losses, he's been one of their best players most nights. And for a team that's aging and kind of lacks athleticism and explosive, he's providing rim attacks every possession. Like, he's just getting downhill. He clearly has a mandate to shoot, score the ball. You mentioned the defensive stats, 1.1 steals, a block per game. That's excellent. He's also hitting 1.7 threes despite shooting below 30% from downtown. He's a career 35% shooter from deep. So I think that only goes up. And it's not easy to find a 16 to 18 point scorer off the waiver wire. So that's another reason, like, even if his steals, the blocks to me seem a little bit inflated early season, small sample size. But even if the blocks come down, if that scoring stays up, that's a guy you want on your roster. So no question to me. I don't know why his roster rate is still hovering below 50%. I grabbed him early and often in my leagues and don't plan on cutting him anytime soon. I will mention quickly an asterisk that if LA does eventually cave and take that Pacers offer for Miles Turner, Buddy Hield could potentially crush Lonnie Walker's value.
Sure.
So just keep that in the back of your mind.
But I mean, at this point, that's almost the worst thing we can say about Lonnie Walker's outlook is they might get Buddy Hield. I mean, it's that and like maybe his defensive stats crater. Those are kind of the only 2 concerns. And I mean, maybe the defensive stats are the bigger concern at this point. I don't know, but you don't factor that in. You don't not roster Lonnie Walker because they might get Buddy Hield. You cross that bridge if we get there ever. One more above 40% guy to talk about, and that is also in LA, but it's the Clippers' Marcus Morris, coming off a game of 21-10 with 2 steals, 4 triples last game. I said this before, if I have Kawhi Leonard in any leagues, and I do, I really would like to have Marcus Morris on the roster because I think when Kawhi's out, he's really going to pop, and he can have that standalone value as well.
Yeah, it's important to remember that Marcus Morris has been playing without knees for 3 years now, though. So at some point, the Clippers will sit him for a game or 2. They've been doing this for the past 2 years. So I'm a little hesitant to add him as a long-term pickup. I'm not dropping anything I'm going to miss. But in the short term, he's been playing really well. 14.7 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steals, and 2.3 triples. The Clippers need weapons right now. I think Robert Covington's still in the protocols probably for another day or 2. So, yeah, keep Morris in lineups and just be prepared to drop him next week.
Yeah,
next week.
That kind of sums it up, though. I mean, he's shooting above his head. He's shooting almost 53% from the field. Has another guy who's yet to miss a free throw this season. Even the rebounds, I think his rebound rate is considerably higher than it's been in recent seasons. So I expect a bit of a correction towards his kind of career mean. But in the meantime, you're talking about a guy who's hovering around top 60 value. You basically just have to roster him and see where it goes.
All right, now to a couple guys sitting directly on that 40% rostered number. Alexei Pokushevsky, who has kind of within an 8-ish game span, has really had a tale of 2 seasons. It was a pretty invisible first 4 games. Some of us cut him in a league or 2. But the last 4 points, he's doing some Poku things. 10.3 points, 6.5 boards, 2 assists, 0.8 steals, 2 blocks, 1.3 pointers. I mean, at this point, Jonas, I think I'd rather roster Poku than the rookie Jalen Williams. But I mean, that could certainly change. So I don't know. That's where we are as of November 4th.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to March when Poku and Jalen are just running the show with SGA and Giddey. They're just sitting on the bench with ice packs on their knees, ankles, backs, and all that good stuff. So I like him. I like him a lot. I wish we could phone a friend and get Doc in here for his take. I know he's a bigger Poku stan than I am. So I wrote in the waiver wire that some nights he'll look like Larry Bird with like the behind the back passes, and other nights he'll play 3 minutes and get pulled, right? So that's just the Poku experience. If you stick with him, usually you'll get more ups than downs. So that's kind of the sell on Poku, right? Some nights he'll get you a near triple double, and the other nights he'll play 5 minutes.
And that's reflected in his Yahoo roster rate, which tends to yo-yo based on whatever he did in the game prior. And he had a really hot preseason. Like the buzz was building and building, and then all of a sudden fizzled when the game started to matter. But as you said, the last couple games, the defensive stats have been there. What concerns me, and the reason why I drafted him in 2 leagues, I ended up cutting him in one, kept him in the other. That's kind of where he is for me. He lives in like a gray area, and part of it is his field goal percentage is horrific. I don't necessarily see that improving. You would love to see him score a little bit more in the paint, but given his frame, I don't know that that's feasible. They want him to play as a 5-out kind of guy. Also, the Thunder are just matchup based. I mean, Mark Dagnall's whims are the entirety of their rotation. They've played 150 5-man lineups this season. Not a single one of them has been on the court for more than 22 minutes per game together. It's wild. Like they're just constantly rotating 5-man groups. If Poku doesn't have it one night, he might play 17 minutes. So you're going to be frustrated with him on your roster. You know, strap in, prepare for that now if you're going to pick him up.
Poku's shooting, by the way, was not good at all the first 4 games. It's been better the last 4 for whatever that's worth. I think around 46%. And down the stretch last year when he was playing better, his field goal percentage was pretty solid, if I remember. So I don't know. I get that that's a concern on any given night, but I think over the long haul, he may be not quite the disaster that he used to be there. And by the way, I have sent a fax to Steve Alexander for his comments on Poku, so we'll see if he gets back to me with that over the course of this podcast. By the way, as for Jalen Williams, like what do you do with him now? I mean, I just dropped him in the 14-team company league. He only played 14 minutes there last game. He had that real nice game while I believe Giddey was still out, but then the last couple games is quiet. I was watching the game the other night. This guy's standing on the wing watching SGA do his thing and watching Giddey do their thing. I mean, I just don't see the usage being there while this team is at full health.
Yeah, I'm confident enough to say that he will be one of the top 3 silly season heroes like later on.
Yeah.
But right now, you're not going to get much. Now, if I had SGA or Josh Giddey, you can make an argument to keep him as your 13th guy in your roster. If you don't, just wait. There's going to be better options on your waiver wire. There's several this week. I'm waiting if I don't have SGA or Giddey.
Yeah, that uncertainty is something I was alluding to with Poku too. Just the rotation inconsistency. It tends to be all over the place. Like even the other night, they load managed Kenrick Williams, who's probably played a total of like 100 minutes this season, and they didn't tell anybody beforehand that they were going to load manage him. So I do not trust the Thunder or their rotations. So a guy who's kind of marginal and is wearing a Thunder uniform is lower on my list than a guy who's marginal and plays for a different team.
Yeah, and that coach has gotten in trouble too for not saying the right injury updates. And he's before the season said he wasn't going to say his lineups until the moment before he was due. So they're going to do all kinds of shitty stuff
because he wanted to instill in his players what it's like to play for a winning team, where you keep the opposition guessing. So that's not helpful.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Chris Boucher is 40% rostered. He has played 20 plus minutes in 3 consecutive games, which I would say is really all we've ever asked of Nick Nurse. But, and by the way, first the numbers, 12 points, 4.7 boards, 1.7 steals, 1.7 blocks, 1.7 threes. If you like 1.7s, this is a delight for you. But Fred VanVleet has been injured, so Jonas, knowing that Nick Nurse, will kind of potentially move a big guy up in the rotation when, a guard is out, how much do we factor that in when we kind of calculate Boucher's minutes moving forward? Because like I said, all we're asking is for 20 to 25 minutes, but can we feel safe with that if we picked him up off waivers?
I actually think so, because if you notice the difference in Nurse this year, he's actually talked up Boucher at least 3 or 4 different times, and every time it's been energy related. that was the biggest knock on Boucher last year. Remember, he had that career year the year before, and then he just kind of took his foot off the gas, and then Nurse let him have it. There was DNPs, there was low-minute games. This year, he's brought back the energy. He has a new contract. The Raptors really like him, and I'm confident that his minutes will stick because Koloko, I think, played 21 or 24 minutes in the last game, and that was a blowout. He's as good as he is as well. He's the kind of guy that's going to get pushed to the side once FBB gets back. I think Boucher has locked himself in for 21, 24 minutes. They don't want Siakam playing the 5 full time. That's going to be bad for him, for his body long term. I think Boucher is here to stay. And like I said, 2 years ago, and I think it was like 23, 24 minutes per game, he was top 40.
Yeah. I totally agree with what you said about Nick Nurse. The positive comments. He's building him up. He's praising the good things that Boucher is doing. In past years, he just ripped into Boucher's lack of effort, specifically in the rebounding department. He was like, this guy can't defensively rebound. And this year, all you hear are glowing reports. And we know that Nurse sticks with his guys. And it seems like Boucher is the 6th man. In the preseason, they were using him alongside Precious Achiuwa, kind of testing out like a jumbo-sized second unit. It seems to me like Boucher is kind of playing Achiuwa off the court at this point. But regardless, and he's shooting over his head. He's going to come down. He's at 64% shooting, 56% from deep. Those numbers will drop, but it doesn't matter because as long as he's getting the defensive stats, shooting at a reasonable clip, he's locked in. I think he's the 6th man. There's an article in The Athletic that even floated him as a very early candidate to be in the 6th man of the year conversation. I don't know that I'm willing to go there, but he's been impressive. The fact that his name would even be suggested in such a context is impressive. So much rather have a guy like Boucher who's lower rostered than Pokusevski, for instance. Not even close in my mind.
Yeah, and the blocks are going to come up too. Ryan mentioned that his 3-point shooting will regress, but his blocks are actually down compared to the last 2 years. So I think those will pick up too.
Yeah.
I also think with Boucher, positive comments from Nurse aside, all the good stuff. I think you also got to be willing to weather like those 14-minute games that probably are still going to happen where he kind of gets forgotten. So I think you're going to have to navigate a little bit of turbulence, but overall really encouraging. And on a non-waiver note, by the way, Gary Trent Jr. was indeed a steal in drafts. He's around 20 points per game, 1.4 steals, 3+ 3-pointers again, a guy who got overlooked, I think, with all of that talk of the jumbo lineup that you mentioned, Ryan. Grant Williams is 33% rostered, and Jonas, I think we're probably going to be in agreement. That number should really be going up. He had 11 points, 7 boards with 2 steals, a block, 2 threes the other night in 32 minutes. I mean, continues to look good for the Celtics.
Yeah, I don't get it. I literally wrote in waiver wire, I don't get it. Why is this number so low? Like his blocks are way higher than we're used to seeing. He's contributing across the board apart from steals. And honestly, the steals will pick up. Like he's just too active defensively for it not to. He's going to fall into some eventually, right? So like you said, 6-rounder. And he had that dud of a game on October 24th. I think that was the ejection too. So much upside here. Horford is already rested back-to-back. So that'll probably continue to be the case. Yeah, what more can you want?
Yeah, nothing really to add there, except another guy whose shooting will regress. He's at 63% from the field, 57% from deep, whatever. But the Celtics know who they have there. His role is written in stone. And even when Robert Williams does come back, that will take a little chunk out of his value. It's kind of one of those situations where you cross that bridge when you get there. And as Jonas mentioned, Al Horford is going to sit out games, whether he's, even if he's healthy, they're just going to rest him. They have a view toward winning a championship, not winning 70 games in the regular season. So Grant Williams is locked and loaded. Yeah, should be a much higher roster rate for sure.
Al Horford is an absolute machine. I'm hearing none of this. 40+ minutes in 2 of the last 3 games, guys. He's starting to pick it up. 12 points, 12 boards, a steal, blocking a 3 the other night. The Al Horford shares are alive and well. I feel like big Al Horford.
Sorry for disparaging him, Matt.
No. I mean, look, I get it. If the Celtics trade for Buddy Hield, it'll hurt everyone involved. I get it.
By the way, the Celtics are going to regret not extending Grant. I've already seen like 3 or 4 teams linked to Grant saying they want to pry him away as a restricted free agent. They're going to regret not signing him.
Okay, Patrick Williams, by the way, of the Chicago Bulls, has played 30+ minutes in 3 straight games. He has responded with some pretty good numbers, Jonas. I don't know if you have those in front of you, but what are your thoughts on this guy? Like, how high is he going to be in your column?
I probably have him, I think, 3 or 4 right now. I think I have him right after Chris Boucher, which sounds about right. And like you said, last 3 games, he's an 8th rounder. The blocks have really picked up. He's at 12.3 points, 5 rebounds, 0.7 steals, 1.7 blocks, and 1 triples. And we saw this rim protection late last season as well, too. That was kind of like the main appeal here. The 3-point shot has always been really good. He's a very high field goal percentage player. And Bulls fans who had given up on him what seemed like last year, and especially at the beginning of this season, they wanted him gone, right? I don't know if you guys follow anyone on Bulls Twitter. They cannot stand Patrick Williams. Maybe they're regretting that now, but he looks really good. Andre Drummond is out, which means smaller lineups. That benefits Patrick. And just, we got to see the aggression. That's the one thing with Patrick.
Yeah.
When he's not aggressive, he's just useless, right? He's got to be in that right mindset, and I think he will.
Let's be fair. He was straight up bad for the first week or 2 of this season. Like he was a non-entity on the court. His energy was lacking. The rebounds were lacking. I think he knew it. The coaching staff knew it. And there was real talk about him potentially losing his starting job. Javonte Green, it was like night and day sometimes. Green would check in, the energy suddenly surged, the defensive, deflections and rebounds, all that stuff. But as you said, Patrick Williams, something has clicked, and he's flying around the court the past couple games, getting those defensive stats, which are going to be key. I don't think that he can survive as a fantasy player without getting 1+ steals per game.
Yeah.
What helps is that he's locked into that starting job, and the Bulls don't really have an appealing alternative. They even, Billy Donovan talked about, hey, maybe we need to change our starting lineup. We're getting off to these slow starts, but he never posited who he would change, because it's mostly a starting lineup full of veterans and then Patrick Williams. I like him. I am a little more skeptical that he's going to keep this going rest of the season, but he's surging right now, so I might as well take that gamble.
Yeah, when I talked to Casey Johnson, who covers the Bulls for NBC Sports Chicago over the summer, that was the big thing. He was like, Patrick Williams, it's the aggression thing, and can he be aggressive enough consistently? And I don't think we've seen enough of a sample to say, oh, he's figured it out now. But encouraging either way, and I think a worthwhile flyer. And I do want to get to this question because it applies to the last 2 guys we talked about. This is Hollowman928 asking, Grant or Patrick Williams long term? For me, because of what we just talked about, I think I'd rather have Grant Williams. I feel a little safer about him at the moment. Do you guys agree?
I think Grant's the safe play here, but if we're talking just pure upside, I think I want Pat Williams, honestly, just because I think he can block way more shots over the long run. I think his rebounding will pick up, like you said. And as you guys know, he has way more in his bag than the Bulls are showcasing right now. Like, he's a way better on-ball creator than people give him credit for. He played point guard in high school. Like, he has that in his arsenal. I'm waiting to see the Bulls to actually unleash it.
Yeah, I guess my hesitation for redraft is I don't know that they will ever give him a chance to unleash it this season. Even without Lonzo on the court, just DeMar's got the ball in his hands so often. Levine, they can play through Vooch. That's just not his role. So I'd lean toward Grant Williams.
One more viewer question that I think applies before we move on to some lesser rostered names. Who's the highest upside waiver ad that's widely available? This from the Professor HB who's watching live with us. Jonas, widely available can obviously be kind of a nebulous term. Jalen McDaniels and Lonnie Walker are 50% rostered. I think we both like those guys a lot. I mean, you guys sound most excited, honestly, about Chris Boucher at this point.
That was going to be my answer.
I would say under 60% rostered. I would say Chris Boucher and then Patrick Williams are probably going to be 1 and 2 this week. Maybe Grant Williams number 3, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious where Patrick Williams takes this, because I don't know. I think like you said, kind of, Ryan, we've seen both sides of this thing. We've seen the downside and the upside. Very, very curious. I have added him in at least one league, and I'm interested to see where it goes from here. I do think it's worth taking a shot on. Davion Mitchell is 28% rostered. Last check, De'Aaron Fox has been dealing with a knee bruise. He had one real good game and one dud without De'Aaron Fox, and I think we're still waiting on the status for De'Aaron Fox for, I believe, Saturday's game, right?
Yeah, and I would imagine he's out. I think the Kings are going to slow play this a little bit. Obviously, Davion Mitchell, apart from that one game where Fox left early, has not been good this season. But I'm kind of drawing confidence from last year because there was a massive sample size when Fox was off the court, and Mitchell did really, really well. He was at 18 points, 7.4 assists, and 1.9 triples as a starter last season. Now, his steals are pretty low considering how good he is on defense. It's kind of like that Lou Dort effect where, yes, he's an amazing defender, but it doesn't often translate to steals, if that makes sense.
Right.
But, man, without Fox, I think he's top 75, even with the dud last game.
Yeah, you stole one of my talking points, which was that his off-night branded defense doesn't necessarily translate to the real world. He had that 3-steal game the other night, I think the first game that Fox was out. But beyond that, he's had 1 steal in 6 games. A lot of that is he's just not getting many minutes. I think he played 12 minutes in 3 consecutive games at one point. That's not going to cut it. And unless they're going to play him alongside De'Aaron Fox, which it doesn't seem like they're likely to, I don't know where the rest of season upside comes from because Kevin Huerter's red hot. They need that court spacing. Malik Monk has shown flashes. I just don't see it. What made you laugh there, Matt?
Kevin Huerter averaging like 19 points on 12 shots per game screams regression to me. But I am, as a Hawks fan, happy to see him playing well for the Kings because he kind of got banished from Atlanta unnecessarily. But yeah, I mean, he's playing well. I think he's worth rostering. I just think all of that's going to come down. Didn't mean to derail you there. Didn't mean
you pivoted to a Kevin Huerter.
We're going to go into let's do a hard 10 minutes on Kevin Huerter now. Career arc. We'll start with his rookie year, Davion Mitchell, though, I mean, I also thought it was interesting because he had that 23-point game, but then a 9-point game, and that game was more of the Malik Monk show. So I don't know. I do want to roster Mitchell where I have De'Aaron Fox, but I'm not thinking this is a guaranteed plug and play. He's good to go anytime Fox is out. There could be some Monk games in there,
Yeah. I mean, Monk was really, really good last game. And I know he closed. He had like 6 or 7 assists too. Like Monk has had his moments. And it's like the last 2 years, Malik Monk has really, really impressed me. He used to be like a bare bones, like Terrence Ross. Right. Now he's got something else to his game now, which is cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a guy who I don't know if he is going to make your column, Jonas. He wasn't on your initial list, but I want to talk about Bruce Brown, who's 34% rostered and last 4 games has been pretty good. 12.5 points, 4.3 boards, 5 assists, 0.8 steals, 2.5 threes in 31 minutes. Thursday night had a really strong game, 15 points, 5 boards, 9 dimes, a steal, a block, and 3 threes. I mean, I guess my perspective on him is he could be a little hit or miss, while Denver's at full strength, but I think he's got a little standalone value and could really explode if there's an injury in front of him.
Yeah, I'm glad you said him because I actually added him this morning when I combed through the list again. He's at 34% when I looked yesterday. I'm not sure what it is today, but he's Denver's Swiss Army knife. He does everything for them. He plays every position. On offense, he's the cutter. On defense, he's marking the best player. Usually last year, Malone would only talk about Jokic after the game because he's in love with Jokic. We all know that. This year, it's Bruce Brown, his new love interest. He loves Bruce Brown. That is his guy, dude. So he's going to play a ton of minutes. Last 4 games, he's a 6-rounder, 12.5 points, 4.3 rebounds, 5 assists, 0.8 steals, and 2.5 triples. I also wrote that he's probably not going to be a long-term hold, right? Because Bones is out right now. There's going to be some stretches, though, where he's putting a value when MPJ or Jamal Murray have to miss a game. So he might be like that Royce O'Neal player last year that just, if you keep him on your roster the whole season, he'll probably put up late route numbers with just ups and downs throughout.
Yeah, maybe. Right. Maybe not the most exciting guy to have on your roster, but it's going to chip in a little bit everywhere. Definitely better in category leagues, I think, than points leagues. But as you were alluding to, like he can play multiple positions. He gets used in weird out of position ways where he's like they're playing through him in the post on certain possessions. It's really interesting. And with Malone loving him, that's only going to ramp up. He's already averaging a career high in minutes with 28.3, career high in scoring with 11.1, career high in assists with 4.1. He's going to give you some defensive stats. And this is a guy who quietly shot over 40% from deep last year. He's nearly 50% from deep this season. He's going to get a ton of open shots because defenses have to pick their poison with the Nuggets offense. Bruce Brown's going to be standing wide open at the 3-point line a lot this season. So I think with his versatility, the Nuggets injury problems, and the fact that they're going to load manage various players throughout the year, yeah, as you said, they're going to be ups and downs. He might not be the most exciting guy week to week, but I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes top 100.
All right, we have more to come, some quick hitting pickups, and a couple more of your questions. First, we're going to take a quick break. Download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. Meanwhile, it's a weekend of must-watch events on NBC and Peacock. It all begins with the horses and the Breeders' Cup Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, followed by Tigers. That would be Clemson Tigers taking on Notre Dame football in South Bend, and it's capped off with Saturday Night Live. The action continues Sunday with the NASCAR Cup Series Championship at 3 p.m. and wraps up with the Titans battling the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football starting at 7 p.m. All of it on NBC and Peacock. Okay, Jonas, this is the point of the podcast where I say, where do you want to take it next? Who, a lot of these remaining guys are 20% rostered or less. We won't hit everyone who's in your column, but who are the priorities here?
Yeah, I'm going to spread some Tari Eason propaganda once again. Like, I'm just going to keep, he's just so good. And The Athletic wrote this big puff piece on him where the assistant coach, John Lucas, compared him to prime Dennis Rodman. You heard that. Prime Dennis Rodman. Yeah. And if you watch the Summer League in the preseason, you're like, yeah, you might be right there. He's ridiculous. And in the last game, he was all over Paul George, dude. He was all over him. Paul George could not get anything going against him. In 18 minutes, he had 6 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 3 blocks. The dude is incredible. He's already posting late round value in like 15 minutes per game. We know that minutes are eventually going to come. KJ Martin's going to be out of there eventually. Eventually the Rockets will try to move Eric Gordon. I don't know how successful they'll be, but the minutes are going to come, right? So I'm just going to hold on until that happens.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Now, I did, to my discredit, have to cut Tari Eason, or I didn't have to, but I did cut him in a redraft league. It's weekly head-to-head, and he just isn't getting the playing time early. My team is off to a bit of a slow start due to a bunch of injuries, so I moved on. But I kept him in a roto league, and I'm excited to see what the second half of the season holds. And that quote from Rockets assistant John Lucas was even more intense, because he said that Tari Eason is a prime example of a better Dennis Rodman, who you can pencil in for X amount of points and so forth. And, all the over-the-top plaudits aside, right, you see it when he's out there. Like, he's a ball of energy. He's physical. He's attacking. There was one game early in the season where he got blocked on 3 consecutive possessions, but on 2 of them, he got his own miss and scored. I'm like, this guy, he's just got an extra gear. And this is a team that's, rebuilding, developing, whatever state you want to call their franchise as being in. Tari Eason should be a pillar for this team. There's no reason Eric Gordon is going to be playing 26 minutes a game in the final months of this season. So Tari Eason, it's his arrow's pointing straight up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're someone who, like, if we talk about upside, we had a question about who's the highest upside player on waivers right now. I mean, you could argue this guy is, and if you're a patient manager who's willing to take the long view and say, I don't, I have one roster spot here that's just the absolute lottery ticket. Why is that player always in Houston? I don't know. But last year was like Alperen Şengün. But I don't know. I think at some point, this guy who seems to be kind of a force of nature is going to force his way into a 25+ minute per game role. And watch out when that happens. Should logic prevail in Houston? Not always the case. Chris Duarte is coming off a 30-point game, which was truly out of nowhere. Ryan's face, just like when I said that, melted into itself. That was a great. I need a screenshot of the look that Ryan made there. Jonas,
it's a red herring.
I mean,
Matt. Don't buy it.
What's that? What's that?
That 30-point game is a red herring. Don't do it.
I know it is, but are we just kind of watching here? Just make sure he doesn't build on it. I don't know.
It's like, is this April already? It's ridiculous, man. We're seeing some weird stuff already. He had a combined 11 points in his previous 2 games. It's like, if you chase this, like, good luck to you. Right. That's all I can say.
We just have such a large sample size from last season and the beginning of this season. There's no reason to think that one fluky game where they were shorthanded and he went off matters, really.
Against the Nets, too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, fine. We're moving on. Larry Nance Jr. has been playing well. I know he was going to make your column, Jonas. I believe just 11% rostered last check. But, they have also been dealing with injuries. Can Nance do it with them getting closer to full health?
Yeah, I may have to cut him from the list. I know Brandon Ingram is
boy.
probable for tonight, if I remember correctly. So that really, really hurts Nance. He's probably looking at 20, 21 minutes. A streamer on a 12-game night, probably not. I think you can do better.
Yeah.
So let's cut him. Let's move on.
All right. Sorry, Larry.
Sorry, Nance.
You're staying in the podcast, but you're out of the column. Who else do you want to mention, Jonas? Because I was gonna talk about Emmanuel quickly, who I don't know if he was on your list.
Yeah, I'm excited that he's going to get 16 rebounds every game for the rest of the season. I'm really excited about that. Great to see.
Sure.
You know, the thing about Quickly is every time I write him up in waiver wire, he'll come up with like a 9-minute game and just get benched. So I'm kind of cautious. I might put him on the watch list just because obviously that was such a impressive game. But yeah, Quickly is just so hit or miss, man. One game he's playing 25, 28 minutes and closing. The next game he's playing 15. So that's a total crapshoot.
Right. To that end, last 4 games, 19 minutes, 28 minutes, 19 minutes, 29 minutes. I watched the entirety of that Knicks-Hawks game, and I mean, 16 rebounds. I don't know how that guy got 16 rebounds. Someone mentioned that to me after the game, and I was like, wait a second, what? Quickly had 16 rebounds? Are we sure? But, I mean, look, he was great down the stretch last year. All he needs is maybe one additional, injury. I don't know if it's the oft-injured Derrick Rose or something like that. Should he get hurt? I don't know. I think, could run it back where he has another really good stretch run. I just don't know if it's right now.
I want to go to another name that I want to put on my watch list, and that's Dyson Daniels.
Oh, you love this guy. He's your new Melton. He's your new Melton.
He is so freaking good, man. Just massive size for a point guard. Literally has Sean Livingston's build, and he's just so impressive. 16 minutes last game. He had 8 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, and 2 triples in 16 minutes. During the preseason, he led all players in deflections. He is everywhere defensively. I know the Pelicans are crowded in the backcourt. You don't have to add him right now. But if you're looking for a breakout candidate at some point, along with Tari Eason, I think Dyson Daniels is that guy. He looks way readier than people realize, honestly.
Yeah, and Willie Green loves him. I'm real mad that I didn't get him in our dynasty draft. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know who did. We did that startup 30-team dynasty league this year, and I wanted him badly because the Pelicans love him. Everything I've seen from him looks amazing. Like as you said, he's got the size, the physical tools, the court vision. It's all there. It's just a question of whether he's going to be able to realize that potential this season, which I don't know that he will. The Pelicans, I think, have a 4-3 record right now. They're probably looking at being a playoff team, maybe play in, whatever, but they're going to be competitive. So I don't know that they have the luxury of just running Daniels out there 20, 25 minutes a game. But he's an injury away from being an absolute must roster guy. So definitely click that star and add him to your watch list.
Yeah. Quick note on the Pelicans. This is pretty cool. They own the rights to swap picks with the Lakers this year from the Brandon Ingram trade. I am 99% sure. I'll have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure that they can swap with the pick with the Lakers this year.
Wow.
Nice. Jonas, before we get to a couple of viewer questions, any more names you feel like you would not be able to live with yourself if you did not mention here today?
Another player I want to mention, Josh Richardson. I'm curious to see if his minutes stay somewhat afloat with Devin Vassell coming back tonight. I don't know the latest on Keldon Johnson. He missed a game with, as Ryan said, tightness. It's just like they're just coming up with every excuse in the book to sit guys. It's just hilarious. Trey Jones popped up with like a random injury. You never know if any of these guys are going to sit night to night. So Josh Richardson.
If tightness was a thing, I would never play pickup basketball again.
Right?
I mean, Lord. I can't. Yeah.
But yeah, someone's got to produce for the Spurs. There's no Josh Primo. Josh Primo was an extremely high usage player. That could fall to Josh Richardson too. So I'm curious to see if he gets 25 plus minutes tonight. If he does, I'm in.
Yeah, and the Spurs might have some incentive to spotlight him too, because he's a definite trade candidate for more established teams who just want a 3-and-D wing. He's already popped up in a couple trade rumors. So there's extra incentive to keep Jay Rich on the court, remind teams of what he's capable of doing. And the Spurs are hurting right now. As you mentioned, Joshua Primo is gone. Blake Wesley had a pretty promising debut the other night, and then now he's out 6 to 8 weeks with a knee injury. So they're kind of running on fumes. So there's a little bit of opportunity there.
Jeremy Sochan only played 10 minutes in their last game, possibly still dealing with an illness, a little unclear there, but that's another guy to watch as a potential pickup. Just 12% rostered and had strung together a few usable games in a row before that. So
Yeah, Popovich had his arm around him. Is like, hey man, just go to the back. You don't look like yourself, and that was it. So
That was it. Okay. Are we ready to get to a few viewer questions before we go, guys?
sure, let's do some questions.
Okay.
Sure.
We had a question about. Okay, well here's one we'll take care of real quick right now. Time will tell 713, is Jalen Williams or Josh Richardson more of a stash/hold? I mean, we talked about Jalen Williams earlier where, yeah, great later in the season lottery ticket, it seems like, for when these shutdowns happen. Right now, when they're at full strength, hard to rely on. So kind of take your pick, but I think Josh Richardson has a better shot at value right now.
Yep, I would say Richardson now, Jalen later, 100%.
Depends on, how you manage your teams. This one is not a waiver wire question per se, but we were talking about the Nets earlier. Macudona wants to know, do we panic sell Kyrie Irving in fantasy? If we even can at this point, who would you even try to trade him for? I mean, I don't know. I think this is always tough. This is it. I think you just have to hope that he's back on the court. You know, when he's back on the court, you can trade him.
He gave a pretty good apology. Yeah. Go ahead, Ryan.
Someone asked on Twitter that they had been offered DeMar DeRozan for Kyrie Irving. Would you accept that offer? Would you prefer DeRozan?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
I would go ahead and click that check mark on accept on that trade personally.
Look, I think people that drafted Kyrie are expecting 60 games from Kyrie, right? 60 games of first round value, and then you deal with the rest of the stuff. Just purely basketball. If you get 60 games of Kyrie, you're going to get a win, basically.
Yeah, I'm just looking at. I'm just refreshing.
Just mute your Twitter notifications.
I know,
and
honestly.
set your lineups.
DeRozan's top 50. I get it. There's not the same ceiling here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I would take the DeMar DeRozan bailout on my Kawhi Leonard investment. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure.
That also, to me, though, like I floated DeRozan. That doesn't seem, to the viewer's question, like a panic sell. Like that's a legit trade. That's not like, oh, I need to unload Kyrie for 10 cents on the dollar. Like, I don't think we're there.
Right.
Okay. The one other one, I think I only have one other one that we really didn't get to here because we do have to go in a second. Someone was asking, Jonas, I can't find it now, about believe it or not, Christian Koloko. Someone wanted to know your thoughts on Christian Koloko.
I saw that question too, and I actually like Koloko a ton in Dynasty League, so I'm interested in buying low there. Now remember, the last game was a blowout that definitely helped his minutes, but he has really impressed in limited minutes. And when you're talking path to play-in time, like, it's Precious, right? Once they get Precious out of the window and he's really, really slowed down, sure, there's a spot for 15, 16 minutes of Koloko. Is that enough for standard league relevance? Probably not this year. But at some point, if the Raptors are missing a starter, because all their starters play like 34 or 36 minutes. If they're missing FVV, for example, there could be a 22-minute game for Koloko and he gets you a couple blocks, decent board, good field percentage. But in terms of reliability, I don't think it's going to happen for him this year.
Ryan, deep in thought. No, you don't have anything to add about Koloko. You haven't been thinking about Christian Koloko all day.
Christian Koloko was not on my radar, so this is very interesting.
That's fair. He's 1% roster. I love the question. Yeah,
it helps that he's playing for the Raptors. They love nothing more than long-limbed defensive type guys. They don't bat an eye at playing unusual lineups with a ton of size. So that helps him, but he wasn't even on my radar for a pickup. So now I'm glad that question popped up.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really just messing with you because you
top 3 name in the NBA right now, though. I love that name.
All right, that is going to do it for us on this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you listen. Take a moment to rate and review us as well. We would appreciate that. We are back on Monday and Friday next week. On Monday, we'll be rounding up some more waiver wire pickups from the weekend and some takeaways as we get into week 4. In the meantime, check out Jonas's waiver wire column on NBC Sports Edge. I want to say thanks to everyone for listening, watching live, and sending in your questions. Ryan, Jonas, thanks. Have a great weekend, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.